Larry Foster is Vice President of Education, Compliance, and Student Services at Tricoci University of Beauty Culture. Before Tricoci University, he served as Vice President of Empire Education Group, Commissioner for NACCAS. Larry has spent over 25 years in the beauty industry as a cosmetologist, esthetician, massage therapist, educator, and spa owner. Tricoci University was founded in 2004 by beauty industry legend Mario Tricoci, who built a highly successful chain of upscale salons and day spas under the Mario Tricoci Hair Salon and Day Spa and Mario Tricoci 2 brands. Mario conceived and launched a brand new company, Tricoci University of Beauty Culture, to introduce fresh and innovative cosmetology and beauty school curriculum, providing students with advanced technical skills, ethics, professionalism, and leadership values. Due to rapid growth in the salon and day spa industry, particularly in the more upscale segments of the market, salon owners are asking for new technicians to possess a higher level of technical, customer service, and client building skills than ever before. Tricoci University Beauty Culture is filling this need using its beauty schools to produce salon-ready professionals that are eager to start their successful careers in cosmetology, aesthetics, nail technology, and as teachers. Tricoci University Beauty Culture believes success for students and associates results from its people-centered culture. They are passionately committed to preparing students to become licensed professionals within the beauty industry. Hey, Larry, how's it going? Welcome to the Volume Up podcast.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
We are excited to have you. All right, so we've given a little bit of a bio, but let's hear about you from you. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in the salon professional industry?
Actually, when I started my career path thinking that I wouldn't go into cosmetology. I actually had always dreamed about it. I was my aunt was a cosmetologist, my mom was for a brief while. So I had always dreamed about it, but I didn't think it was a viable career. So I went into hotel management originally. So that's what my degree was in, and got involved in meeting and event planning, and got a little tired of the travel. So I'd been getting massages, I'd been getting facials, and I thought this is great. So I went back to school for those two things first and got my licenses, worked in a day spa in Indianapolis, and then opened up my first day spa shortly thereafter. And then I grew it to my second day spa. And that one was more what I like to call my BAP stream, Holly Berry's finest movie. So she went to
deep cut, Larry.
And a salon. So I ended up opening a restaurant, day spa, and bed and breakfast. So I incorporated it all. And then when I sold those, my husband and I had children at the time. So I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad. And then I found out that being a stay-at-home dad really wasn't for me. So somehow through all that evolution, I ended up in the beauty school business after that.
Wow, that's quite a path. We appreciate the honesty. Oftentimes on this podcast, we've got people being like, I always knew it was always going to be in the cards for me. So I'd like to hear this one. That was a little bit of a different pathway. And again, the deep cut with the Halle Berry Babs reference. We'd love to see it. So how did you get from Indianapolis with multiple locations to Tricoci University?
So once we had our children, I was actually at swim lessons with my children, and my husband stopped over, and I was talking to all the moms about the plans and things like that, because this was 20 years ago. And he looked at me and said, really, this is what your life's become? And I was like, so I wasn't real happy just staying at home. So the good thing about the beauty industry is you can kind of manipulate it the way you want. So you can do it part-time, you can do it full-time. And so I rented out a space in a small studio and started doing hair and skin and massage and all that there. And it worked out incredibly well because I was still able to be at home and be a part of my kid's life, but still got to get out a little bit. And I went to visit a girlfriend of mine who was working in a beauty school. And after I got through talking to her, I was walking to my car, and this crazy woman who ended up becoming one of my mentors chased me out in the parking lot and pulled me into her office. And I was sitting there talking to her, and I had given myself a chemical peel. I had been working out in the garden, so I had on shredded jeans. And about 10 minutes in the conversation, I said, "Are you interviewing me for a job?" And she goes, "No, I'm offering you a job. I really need you here." So that was my first kind of go at a beauty school. And I ended up staying with that company for 12 years and worked my way up from an educator all the way up to the National VP of Education.
Wow.
And then from there, I transitioned over to Tricoci and haven't looked back. I've really enjoyed education.
Oh, wow. That again, we're like just learning all sorts of incredible things. Look at where life can take you. With Tricoci, what does your actual day-to-day look like? Like, break that down for us a little bit. I think that people would be curious to know.
So I am over all things education, compliance, and student services. So a lot of my day is spent working either with our vendors like L'Oreal, I have a meeting with them tomorrow, or I'm developing new curriculum, or I'm working with our student retention issues, or I'm dealing with regulatory issues from the government and Department of Education. So it's a little bit of everything, which fits perfectly into my ADD because I never have to stay focused on one thing. I just kind of bounce back and forth all the way around.
Wow. What's one thing that you do every day at work that people would never think of?
I think they would probably be surprised that I do lists. I actually start my day with a list. I end it with a list, seeing what I actually got accomplished. And then I start working on my list for tomorrow. And it's just a repeat because, again, I joke all the time that I'm ADD, or actually I tell everyone I'm more ADLAP, which is more attention deficit. Oh, look, a puppy. So I really need those lists to stay focused. So I think that's my one go-to thing that I have to do. So at the end of every night, I go through and see what was accomplished off the list, see what can wait till tomorrow. If there's something that can wait till tomorrow, then I finish quickly before I end my day. And then I start the day out with the new list.
Wow. So, I mean, save for looking for puppies, what else are you really enjoying about your work at Tricoci? What is like the one thing where you're like, oh God, this is it for me?
I will tell you that one of the things that when Tricoci came courting me, it took me about 6 months to say yes. And the one thing that sealed the deal for me was meeting with my CEO face to face. And I realized when he started talking about the mission, how important was for him that we weren't just the educator of choice, but he wanted to be the employer of choice. And that really struck a chord with me, that we are not only focused on providing the best education we can, but we want to be a great employer. We want to give back to our educators, our campus directors, everyone that works within the company. And we are moving forth with that mission all the way around. And it's been incredible. So that's the one thing about Tricoci that I think I just don't look back. I think that I've landed at my forever home.
Well, we love that for you. And we want that for our listeners. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is a lesson that you've learned during your career? It spans a couple of areas, and obviously you're happy at Tricoci now, but along the way, I'm sure you've picked up some wisdom. What's the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
I think the biggest lesson for me is that getting people to realize that it's not always, when they're leading people, it's not really always about the job skills. It's really learning to focus on those people skills, because no matter where you're in, we're involved in sales, right? So, and people don't buy things, people buy people. So we have to be able to have those job skills, but more importantly, those people skills. When you're leading a team, if you're a salon manager and you have 12 employees, it's not 12 employees, it's 12 individual people. And you have to know what actually incentivizes them, what motivates them, what inspires them. And you have to be able to work with that.
Related, what's one thing that everyone in the industry should either stop or start doing, based on sort of what you just said to us there?
I think we need to stop giving up. I think that's one piece of it. I think that a lot of times we just stop. I think stop job hopping. That's one of the things with our students once they graduate. Really take your time to get that placement to be perfect for you, because the more we jump around, we don't get a chance to build that clientele. And I think one thing we need to start doing is taking better care of ourselves, because once we get busy, we don't always take the time to really take care of ourselves. And I think we have to be able to take care of ourselves and have a good work-life balance and figure out what we need to be able to refresh each day, what fills our cup.
Well put. What is, from your perspective, having been in different parts of the salon professional beauty industry, the biggest myth from your end? What do you think people get wrong about our industry?
I think if they don't work in our industry, the biggest myth is that we don't make any money. You know, we're in a business that is over a $500 billion business. You know, so, and I feel like you can be as big in that world as you want to be, or as small as you want to be, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I really am hopeful that people understand that you can make an incredible career within the beauty industry and make a lot of money doing it and have a lot of fun. You know, if it wasn't for this industry, I may not have seen the world like I have. May not have met the people I met. I mean, I really regret I didn't go into it straight after high school, but I'm here now and I love it. So I think that's the biggest myth, is when I talk to parents and people who are coming to beauty school, they just don't think their children are going to make any money. I mean, yeah, those are the things that'll help us overcome that stigma of thinking that cosmetologists don't make money. You know, what the American Association of Cosmetology Schools is doing, I just came from their convention a couple of weeks ago. What they're doing is actually going and battling the Bureau of Labor Statistics that actually has our cosmetology salary at something like $18,000 a year or something ridiculous. So they're doing a whole study on their own to be able to show what cosmetologists do make. You know, they're going to be somewhat limited. I still think that's going to be a little skewed, because we all know not all cosmetologists report all their income. And
what do you mean?
So, I mean, I'm not sure we're going to get the true definition of an average salary, but it's going to more than double what's currently out there. It's showing that it is a viable income.
Yep. Well, let's talk about that shift, because you are responsible for helping us to get into a different mindset, a different paradigm. So what are you seeing at Tricoci? What are the biggest challenges that you are seeing from students that they're facing when they're thinking about coming to cosmetology school? What are the hurdles? What are we looking at?
The hurdles when they're thinking about going to beauty school is probably their parents. I think parents right now are becoming a little bit more aware of the value of a trade school. So I think that's a big piece of it, but they still battle it. I think everyone always wants their son or daughter to go to a 4-year college.
Yep.
I went to a 4-year college. You know, so
and you're here.
Yeah, I'm not using, I missed out on probably 10 years that I could have been in the industry a lot sooner. And that part is something I communicate to them a lot. I mean, from Tricoci's standpoint, we have other things. You know, we have the regulatory things, we have gainful employment, we have, you know, the borrower's defense to repayment, you know, but I think we're on a trend. We see a lot more people enrolling in school. We see a huge upswing in aesthetics, and that is probably overtaking cosmetology as our #1 program, and they're kind of neck and neck.
Wow.
So I think that's it. I think at Tricoci, we have such a strong, diverse population, and we're learning how to manipulate through that as well, so everyone feels inclusive and that they're a part of something bigger. So all in all, I mean, we are tackling each challenge, but I think the biggest one for our students is that family support, you know, so I think that's a huge piece of it.
Yeah, we've had podcast guests who admitted to lying to parents in order to go to cosmetology school, where they said that they were doing something else, they just wouldn't disclose. And we had one of our podcast guests talk about somebody discovering their kit and that sort of outing them as doing what they were doing because of the stigma that you were referring to. All right, so let's talk about students that are enrolled. And it's good to hear that you've got, you know, this competitive program between aesthetics and hair. What are challenges that students are facing once in beauty school?
Once in school, I say the #1 challenge we deal with is probably mental health, and that's followed by more financial burdens. and childcare. But I think mental health right now is a huge concern and something that we need to talk more openly about.
Mhm.
The good news is with us, I'm over student services and we have student success advisors at every school. And if people have those obstacles like mental health issues, or if they're having problems with childcare, or they're homeless, or whatever the case may be, those are people at the school at the ground level that are working with them to be able to help them problem solve those issues, to make sure that we're doing everything to make them successful. Because we don't always know what that student's facing on a daily basis.
Sure.
I was at a campus not too long ago talking to a student and was congratulating her because she graduated with 100% attendance from the cosmetology program, which is, a 10-month program. And she explained to me how had been homeless for the last 4 months and living in her car, and sometimes her car wasn't working, and what she had to do to get to school and all those things. And now here she is, already passed the state board prior to graduating. So she's graduated with 100% attendance, got her license, and now is able to actually support her and her daughter. And that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, there's so many inspiring stories like that within this industry, which is important for us to be able to talk about. How would you say, in your role, that Tricoci is helping students to go beyond just learning about cutting and coloring and more about entrepreneurship, networking, mentorship, being mentored, being the mentee? How do they get clients to feel comfortable? Like, what does that look like within your curriculums?
So we work with different vendor partners who actually help us develop business programs, because when I talk to the students, I speak not only about entrepreneurship, but intrapreneurship, because I think, the number one question, or when we ask people, what is your dream? Why are you in cosmetology school? The number one answer we get is usually, I want to open up my own place. So, but I try to encourage them and let them know that you don't have to be the owner of a place. You can be an entrepreneurial too. You can go in and run that place like it's your business. In my prior life, at my previous job through education, through that whole 12 years, from going from educator to national VP, I never applied for a single position. Even my first one, I was chased down in the parking lot. So through every bit of my growth, I never applied for a single position. I even turned down promotions along the way because I wasn't sure if I wanted to take them. But it was because of that entrepreneurial spirit that they saw in me, that actually I was working on the betterment of the company and growing, things like that. And I was rewarded that way. And I'm trying to convince students that that is a path that they can take. And then once they get all that experience, then they can open up their own salon. So it's not always just jumping off and going straight into it, because we really work with the vendors to make sure it takes an average of 2 years for a student to build a book once they're out of school. We want them to start building that book in school. We want them to take their clientele with them. They're not necessarily going to take the person who's sitting in their chair that's been coming there for 20 years. But if they're recruiting people and using business skills to get them in, and they're people that they personally market themselves to, that they brought in, they will go out and pay their real world pricing when they graduate. And it's important for them to be able to do that now, because then they're not sitting in a chair and spinning and waiting for a person to come in when they get in the salon. They're a lot more employable. So we work with Prosper U, and they do a great business building program. We also work with Beauty as a Business that does a lot with the social media aspect of training them how to use that to build a book. So we incorporate a lot of that into our curriculum because we want to make sure they're successful, and business is a huge part of it. You can be really great at doing hair or great facial or whatever, but you don't have the business building skills or that knowledge, then you're not always going to take off the way you want.
That's fair. And important to think about. Because you can teach maybe some of the those skills, but really the business building things that are going to help them to be successful, coming from experts is always the best route. People that have learned it, lived it, to help them out. Let's talk a little bit about challenges to the education of our industry. Beauty schools, cosmetology schools, programs have been criticized, rightfully so, as regards the curricula maybe being a little bit targeted towards specific hair textures and not looking at others to the extent that they should be. You talked a little bit about clientele diversifying, students diversifying. The world is looking different, unfortunately. For a long time, curricula hadn't sort of caught up to what the world looked like. So how is Tricoci, how are you guys preparing students to work with, diverse hair textures specifically?
Well, I think not only diverse hair textures, I think, the one thing about the beauty business is I feel like we've always been one of the more accepting industries all the way around. But I don't think we've moved quick enough, not only with different hair textures, but also gender, age, a lot,
Sure.
even skin types and skin tones. I mean, so all the way around, I just don't think we've moved quick enough. And I don't think Gen Z is going to tolerate us moving as slow as we have. They're very vocal. I mean,
they are.
I am guilty. I was educated and schooled by my daughter probably about 3 years ago. She's 18 now. So I want to say she was 14 or 15. And we got into discussion about non-binary, and she looked at me through the discussion because my thought on it was I was struggling with the they, whether that for me it was a grammatical thing, because it was identifying one person. And she actually looked at me through the discussion. She goes, "You realized you sound homophobic," and I'm a gay man in my 50s. So I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
That's tough, yeah.
How can you call me homophobic? And then I realized she wasn't calling me. She said I sounded like it because I wasn't really being as open. So I made it a mission to really learn. And talking through it with a friend of mine, I was like, we grew up in the 80s. We grew up with Boy George, Annie Lennox, Grace Jones, Divine, even David Bowie at that time, so if those aren't great examples of people who could have been identified as non-binary, then I say shame on us because we grew up with it and we were, resisting some of that change. So we looked at it from a business perspective and we decided we are not going to teach to color, we're not going to teach to gender. So we've made everything more gender neutral. We're rolling out a brand new menu that is not specific to any gender. It discusses textures of hair, not colors of skin. Everything about it is more neutral. And that's what we want. We want everyone to feel included. And then we worked with Pivot Point, who's incredible from a curriculum standpoint. And our partners there really embrace it. So they're helping me with the curriculum side and the textbook side. They actually have been teaching now that hair is more like fabric. It's the fabric of the hair. It has nothing to do with the color of the skin. We should treat it like fabric because this, silk, when we talk about the textures and the 1 through 4 and the A through C, that's all we're worried about. It's not who it's attached to because we live in a very diverse time. So people don't always identify as Black or white or African American or Asian or anything else because we are all a little bit of a mutt anymore. So we're all a hybrid of all of it. And that's the main thing is maintaining that integrity of hair. And the way we have to do it is to know the texture and not have fear over different textures of hair. I think that's a big thing with some schools in the past is we had a fear of it and we allowed students to have fear. If they weren't comfortable working with a certain type of texture of hair, then we had another student step in and do it for them, but in our industry, skin type is also an issue because there are some things that we can do on certain types that we can't do on others.
That you can't.
Right. So we end up, if we don't know how to handle the skin type, then we could end up with post-traumatic hyperpigmentation or anything like that. So really trying to educate students on how to do it so they have a comfort level. And so no matter who comes in and sits in their chair, they can do that hair.
Which, honest to God, love to hear that you guys are taking this as seriously as the moment is requiring. And yeah, like this is the dream, that we want people to be able to receive service that is going to work for them, and for the professional to know how best to serve them. So exciting to hear that you guys at Tricoci are taking this as seriously as it is, and that you're preparing students to really help make a difference out there, and to not have this sort of segregation of services continue into this decade. Let's be done with it. Don't love to hear that your daughter is schooling you, but good for her for doing it.
I have no regrets about it. I mean, that's the whole thing with her generation, Gen Z. You know, it's they are very vocal and they want to be a part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and I love that about them. So it was eye-opening to me because I didn't realize something as small as just that one pronoun and my struggle with it. It wasn't that I was refusing to do it. It was just talking to her about my personal struggle with it. And so it was a wake-up call for me. You know, I think we just have to step outside our comfort zone sometimes. You know, we have to be willing to be schooled. You know, I feel like every time I'm in a campus, I can be taught anything by any of the students. And I love that. I think that I really have that appreciation. If Gen Zs are this strong, you imagine what the Generation Alpha is going to be like.
That's exactly right.
They have Alpha in their name, I'm sure. They're going to be just as passionate about it as we are.
Well put. All right, so let's talk a little bit about stigma. We've touched on this a few times within our conversation thus far. Biggest misconceptions about cosmetology school. So not necessarily the career after, and there not being money in it, but like within school, what are challenges? What are misconceptions that people might experience?
I think misconceptions from the students level is probably more thinking that they're only going to learn how to pass the state board. And I think that we have a limited amount of time, but we want to really focus on teaching that student everything we can. So whether that's getting guest speakers in, you know, or whether that's teaching more advanced modalities, or we're bringing in a lot more eyelash extensions, brow lamination, things like that, or we're now test piloting micro nanoing, which is kind of like micro needling, but from a school perspective, we're not going into the actual dermis. Sure. So we're looking for those advanced modalities to be able to teach the students above and beyond. You know, again, going into the business building piece, you know, teaching them how to, not just how to rebook, but how to do additional add-ons with those services, how to ask for referrals, you know, everything we can to help them be successful from the business side. But I think the stigma for me also with the students is also teaching them that professional license means something. You know, a lot of our students never finished anything. They didn't necessarily even finish high school. So when they finish cosmetology school, A, they've completed something, but B, they're getting a professional license from the same agency in a lot of states that license the doctors and nurses and lawyers. And that's something that can't be taken away from them. That's a huge accomplishment. And I think they should take pride in that. So I think those little things, those reminders, help fight all of those different stigmas in the outside world, but really bring it home to the cosmetology student and the aesthetic students.
Well, I love that. Larry, let's bring it home right now. So we've gone through quite a lot in our conversation, but we got some quick takes left. So we're going to ask you these questions. We ask these of all of our guests, and then we'll wrap.
Okay.
First question that we've got for you. What is a quote that you love?
I love all sorts of quotes. I use different things for different agendas that I may be teaching or whatever, but I think like this one, a huge one that speaks to me is actually from Estee Lauder, where she said, I never dreamed about success, I worked for it. Because as you said earlier in the program, you said everyone always dreamed it, they knew they were going to be it. Well, I always dreamed it too. I mean, I remember with my Aunt Kathy, when she was working in a salon, emptying the ashtrays, that's how old I am, but the ashtrays in the little dryer chairs and things like that. But so yeah, I always dreamed of it. But you have to work for it. If you want to be
Mm.
successful, you have to work for it. And I think we do. I think there's a whole probably 90% of us who always had this as a dream, whether we were doing our cousin's hair or playing with Barbies or whatever. I think we always knew we wanted to get our hands in hair or some part of the beauty business. But that's part of it. The dream is part. We have to work for it. And I think that using someone in the beauty industry and using our quote is really effective with our students and stands out for me.
Well, that is a good one. And we appreciate that additional context. I mean, you're exactly right. What is the last thing that you Googled, but keep it safe for work?
Oh, well, I have kids, so I'd always keep it safe for work.
Great.
So mine would be Johnny Depp, Nightmare on Elm Street. Because that's my costume this year, and I wanted to see what tennis shoes he wore.
Spooky season. Let's get into it. That's amazing. Did you find the shoes?
So yeah, I just ordered them off Amazon, but I already have the sweatpants. I have the crop jersey shirt. So I just wanted the tennis shoes. So.
All right. Well, this is a good segue into the next question, which is, what is the cringiest trend that you've tried? You've mentioned being in the industry for a handful of years. I won't name them. We're not going to age you. We've all done things that we regret in terms of hair, skin, etc. I was an unabashed tanorexic for a long time. These are things that are cringy in retrospect. So anything that you cringe over?
Perms in the 80s. So I had, again, since my aunt was a hairstylist, she used me a lot when they were learning new techniques. So I had the whole permed mullet with my sides strictly slicked back with gel on the sides. So yeah, when I look at those pictures, I'm like, very, very bad choice. Especially when they're paired with my parachute pants.
That's
so the combination.
Right, it's like in isolation.
Yeah,
maybe it could have worked. Maybe
I
it
think
could
the
work
80s
now,
just weren't kind to us for a lot of trends, but that probably was my worst one.
All right. What is one thing that you would change about your daily routine if you could?
Probably get more sleep. I think that I always say working out, but for some reason that I usually average about 5 to 6 hours a night sleep. So I think I'd probably get a little bit more rest. But when I wake up, I just don't want to lay there anymore. I just start going at that point. So I'd probably get more sleep.
Okay, we'll take it. What animal are you most like?
Oof. So if I had to pick one animal, I would probably say an elephant. So because they tend to be a little bit more easygoing, but they are great leaders and they're loyal to their group. So I think probably an elephant. Let's get to eat a lot.
Elephant doesn't come up often, but that's a good one. All right, we on this podcast are beauty junkies, product heads. So what is one product that you can't live without? Like you couldn't get through a day without this thing. Hair, face, skin, it could be anything. Fragrant, we'll take it all.
That would be a tie. Now that you brought fragrance in, it would be a tie because it would either be my Ruzel's Pink Pig pomade, because my hair doesn't do well with anything else but that as far as for the final style. And then probably Joe Malone, because I'm a little bit of a Joe Malone addict. So I have a lot of those fragrances, and so probably from that perspective. But if it's strictly hair or skin, I would say the biggest thing would be Ruzel's Pink Pig. I am a huge product junkie, and I have product all over the place, and I use a little bit of everything. But that's the one thing that stays stable.
We love that. I feel your pain there. Blessing and a curse. I've got so many things. Use a little bit of this, a little bit of that, which is why we're all looking for recommendations. So if somebody's looking for a pomade, they're going to go and look that up. What is, last question here, the ultimate comfort food for you?
So my ultimate comfort food is probably my mom's pot pie. She has never shared the recipe with us. I have the pie part of the recipe because we own a bakery. So, and I know the secret ingredient to a really great pie is the cheap vodka that we put in it because it makes it really flaky and great. But as far as the innards of what she puts in that chicken pot pie, it's just amazing. So my mom's chicken pot pie is my one go-to, but I can't make it. She has to make it for me.
Well, sometimes we got to learn and lean on people to do these things to help us. And you've certainly set this up that you're doing a lot of that for others. They're leaning on you to get them to go where they need to go. So Larry, honest to God, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you for talking. Last thing, if people want to find out more about you, more about Tricoci University, where can they go? How could they sign up? Drop all the links, and we're going to include things in our show notes.
Sure, it's tricociuniversity.edu, and we have 15 campuses through Indiana, Wisconsin, and Illinois. So they're more than welcome to look it up and come visit us. Not only if they want to be a student, but also for services, because our students need to get their hands on, and nothing better than coming into a beauty school. Even if you're licensed, come into the beauty schools, get things done, give feedback to the students. It's really welcomed, and it's a great way to get your next employee, your next rising star.
Boom. Ugh, what a way to end. Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks to Larry for joining and for sharing all of the deets. I mean, again, the legacy of Tricoci, the salons, Mr. Tricoci himself, the schools, also important to talk about.
And we loved his commitment to inclusion and making changes. So kudos to Larry. Shout out to the team over at Tricoci University for really stepping in and making some big changes. We'd love to see it.
Love to see it. Be sure to hit subscribe, rate, and review, and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok at Read the Tease, and send in questions to volumeup@thetease.com.
Volume Up is a Tease media production. This episode was produced by Mama Hickey and Madeline Hickey. Brian Daly is our editor and audio engineer. Thank you to our creative team for putting together the graphics for this episode.